The massive halls of Galactic University sparkled under the light of three suns. Blue adjusted his breathing apparatus as he hurried along the polished corridor. His footsteps echoed off the crystalline walls, joining the soft hum of anti-gravity platforms that carried other students to their classes. He was late for his first xenosociology meeting, and being late was not something students from Perfect Prime did. Two other students were already waiting outside Director Nim's office when Blue arrived. One had shimmering scales that changed color with each breath, while the other glowed softly in patterns that matched their emotions. Blue recognized them from orientation, Spark from the crystal gardens of harmony, and Gleam from the peaceful clouds of joy. Both came from perfect worlds just like him. Come in, called a voice from inside. Director Nim, a tall being with 4 arms and eyes that looked like distant galaxies, gestured them inside. Sit down, young ones. Today, we assign your research projects. The 3 students sat down on the floating cushions, each hoping for an interesting but safe assignment. Their homeworlds were all Class 1 planets, perfect places without any natural disasters, dangerous animals, or harmful weather. You 3 have shown exceptional promise. Director Nim began, bringing up a holographic display. That's why I'm giving you the most challenging assignment. The display showed a blue and green planet spinning slowly. This is Earth. Spark's scales turned pale pink with excitement. The quarantined world. How thrilling. Yes, the very same. Director Nim nodded. A Class 12 Deathworld. Blue's breathing apparatus hitched. Surely those stories about Earth are just tales to scare children. No intelligent life could evolve in such conditions. Director Nim's eyes sparkled dangerously. Oh, let me show you something. He pressed a button, and the hologram changed to show various scenes from Earth. This planet has crushing gravity, extreme temperature swings, and regular natural disasters. The very air can freeze or burn you depending on where you stand. There are zones where invisible radiation would kill most species in days. The planet's crust regularly cracks open, spewing molten rock. Gleam's glow dimmed to a worried blue. And there's life there. Not just life, Director Nim said, showing more images. The dominant species, humans, built civilizations there. They survive everything the planet throws at them. They even thrive. But how? Blue asked, his scientific curiosity overtaking his fear. The gravity alone should make complex life impossible. That's what you're going to study, Director Nim said. You'll be the first student group allowed to observe Earth directly in 50 cycles. You'll stay at one of their learning centers, a university, as they call it, in a region they consider extremely safe. Spark's scales rippled with patterns of doubt. If this is their safe zone, what's the dangerous part like? The location is in what they call Norway. The temperature only drops to -5 degrees during your stay. Quite mild, they assure me. Mild. Gleam's glow turned almost white with shock. That's cold enough to freeze most liquids. Indeed, Director Nim said. And humans drink liquid water to survive. Regular contact with dihydrogen monoxide would kill most galactic species, but they're made of it. The 3 students stared at each other in disbelief. Their assignment was to study creatures that not only survived in poison, but were made of it. You leave in 3 days, Director Nim continued. Your guide will be one of their professors, an expert in alien relations. Remember your safety training. No matter how casual the humans seem about their death world, you must remain vigilant. As they left the office, Blue's mind raced with questions. How could anything live with such high gravity? How did humans handle such temperature extremes? What kind of creatures would evolution create in such a hostile place? This is exciting, Spark said, their scales now a bright orange. Real Deathworld research. Exciting. Gleam pulsed with nervous light. We're going to a planet that could kill us in 100 different ways. Blue checked his tablet, reading more about Earth. It says here humans regularly survive things that would be extinction-level events on our worlds. They call them natural disasters, and just rebuild afterward. The three students looked at each other, a mix of fear and fascination in their expressions. They had 3 days to prepare for their trip to the most dangerous planet known to the galaxy. None of them slept well that night, their dreams filled with images of a wild world where the very air could freeze and the ground could break apart at any moment. What they didn't know was that their research would change not just their understanding of Earth, but of life itself. The transport ship landed in what humans called a parking lot outside the Norwegian University. Blue, Spark, and Gleam huddled together inside their environmental suits, triple-checking the seals. Through the ship's windows, white crystals fell from the gray sky. "That's frozen water," Spark said, their scales shifting to a curious purple. "The humans call it snow, and they just let it fall on them." Gleam's glow flickered with worry. What if it builds up and crushes them? The ship's door opened with a soft hiss. The first thing they noticed was the gravity. It pulled at them like invisible hands, making their legs shake. Even with their suit supports, moving felt like swimming in thick liquid. "Welcome to Earth." A tall human stood before them, wearing what looked like thin fabric coverings. No environmental suit, no breathing apparatus, just some clothes as humans called them. "I'm Professor Reed. I'll be your guide during your stay." The three students stared in horror as a snowflake landed on the professor's exposed skin and melted. The human didn't even flinch. "The temperature is quite mild today," Professor Reed said with a smile. "Only -5 degrees Celsius. Perfect weather for a campus tour." Blue's translator must have malfunctioned. Surely the human didn't just call these freezing conditions mild. They followed Professor Reed across the parking lot, each step requiring intense concentration. The gravity made everything harder. A group of human students passed by, running and laughing, wearing even less protection than Professor Reed. Some had their head fur exposed to the deadly snow. "Those students," Spark asked, their scales now a confused yellow, "are they some kind of enhanced warriors?" Professor Reed laughed. "Oh no, those are just regular students heading to the gym. Speaking of which, would you like to see our sports facilities?" Inside the building, the aliens watched in amazement as humans lifted heavy metal objects repeatedly. Others ran on moving platforms, deliberately tiring themselves. Some were hitting each other with padded gloves. This is how they train for combat. Gleam's glow had turned a sickly green. No, Professor Reed explained. "This is just exercise. For fun and health." Fun. Blue's breathing apparatus wheezed as he tried to process this information. They endure extra gravity and physical strain. For entertainment. They moved to the cafeteria next. The sight nearly made them faint. Humans were casually ingesting various substances that would be considered toxic on most worlds. They sprinkled sodium chloride, actual salt crystals, on their food. They drank dark liquids containing stimulants. Some even ate parts of other organisms that had been heated with thermal radiation. A human child ran past them, carrying a frozen sweet substance. "Ice cream in winter," Professor Reed chuckled. "Kids will be kids." The young one, Spark's scales had turned white with shock. It's eating frozen water mixed with sugar. Both substances are corrosive to most species. "Oh, humans start building cold resistance early," Professor Reed said. "Would you like to try some?" All three aliens took an involuntary step back. They continued the tour, passing through various buildings. In one laboratory, humans handled iron tools without protection. In another, they watched students working with electrical equipment that could power a small city on their home worlds. The day was full of surprises. They learned that humans slept for hours in a vulnerable state, needed constant water intake, and couldn't photosynthesize their own food. Yet somehow, they had built this impressive facility of learning. As they returned to their specially prepared quarters, Blue noticed dark clouds gathering. "Ah, looks like a storm's coming." Professor Reed said cheerfully. The forecast mentions possible thunder and lightning. Should make for an interesting night. The three students hurried inside their reinforced room, designed to protect them from Earth's harsh conditions. Through their window, they watched as human students walked calmly through the increasing wind, some even stopping to look at the approaching storm. Maybe Director Nim was right, Blue said quietly. Maybe we underestimated this place. Spark's scales had settled into a deep blue of contemplation. We've only seen their safe environment. Imagine what the rest of Earth is like. Gleam's glow pulsed weakly. What kind of evolution creates creatures that can survive all this? That can thrive in these conditions. Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the campus. In that brief moment, they saw dozens of humans going about their lives, completely unbothered by the raw power of their world. It was then that the three students began to understand. They weren't just on another planet. They were on a world that forged its life through endless challenges, creating something entirely unique in the galaxy. And they had only scratched the surface. The next morning brought more surprises for the alien students. They watched from their observation room as humans gathered in a large open area near their dormitory. A group of them started running in circles around a track. They're being chased by something dangerous. Gleam's light flickered rapidly with concern. No, Professor Reed said, checking some notes on a tablet. This is the university track team. They run to get better at running. Blue's breathing apparatus made a confused whirring sound. They practice pursuit predator behavior, voluntarily. Their attention shifted to another area where small humans played on metal structures, climbing high into the air and sliding down smooth slopes. The alien students watched in horror as these young ones hung upside down, swung through the air, and jumped from dangerous heights onto soft ground covering. Shouldn't we warn their parental units? Spark's scales had turned a worried orange. Those tiny humans are risking death. Professor Reed smiled. That's a playground. It's designed for children to build strength and coordination. See those adults sitting on the benches. They're watching their kids play. The adults encouraged this. Blue couldn't believe what he was seeing. They moved to the university's botanical gardens next. Here, humans work directly with various plant species, their bare hands touching soil teeming with microscopic life. Some even grew plants specifically to eat them later. These plants, Spark said, their scales shifting to an interested green as they studied their readings, they convert solar radiation into energy. Yes, that's photosynthesis, Professor Reed explained. Most of our food ultimately comes from plants. But you can't photosynthesize yourselves. Gleam's glow pulsed with confusion. How did your species survive before mastering agriculture? We hunted other animals and gathered plants. Professor Reed said casually. Humans can track prey for days, running until the target gets too tired to continue. The aliens stared at their professor with new understanding. Every human was a pursuit predator, evolved to chase prey to exhaustion. Yet here they were, teaching and learning peacefully. Later that day, they observed a physical education class. Humans divided into teams were throwing a ball through elevated hoops. They ran, jumped, and deliberately collided with each other, all while their internal temperatures rose to levels that would kill most galactic species. They're sweating, Blue noted, checking his instruments, releasing water to cool themselves. In this gravity, under this exertion. Fascinating adaptation. Spark agreed, their scales rippling with scientific interest. Their endurance seems impossible. The day brought more revelations. They learned that humans regularly experienced hallucinations they called dreams during their sleep cycle. Their bodies required regular maintenance through exercise to stay healthy. They could heal from injuries that would be fatal to most species. Even their young ones showed remarkable durability. As they watched a group of students playing something called frisbee on the lawn, a small furry creature suddenly ran across the field. Several humans immediately shifted their attention, some making excited sounds. A dog, one human called out. Others moved to pet the creature, which seemed equally happy to see them. They formed alliances with other predator species. Gleam's glow turned almost white with shock. Dogs were one of our first animal companions, Professor Reed explained. We evolved together. They helped us hunt, we shared our food. Now they're pets. Animals we keep for companionship. The aliens tried to process this. Humans not only survived on their Deathworld, but they also befriended other dangerous species. The sun began to set, and the temperature dropped further. The humans simply added layers of clothing, continuing their activities despite the increasing cold. Some even removed their protective layers when entering buildings, seeming completely comfortable with rapid temperature changes. Back in their safe room, the three students compiled their notes from the day. Everything we thought we knew about survival needs to be reconsidered, Blue said, reviewing their observations. These humans, they don't just survive here. They've turned survival into recreation. Did you notice, Spark added, their scales showing patterns of deep thought? How they help weaker members of their species. Instead of letting natural selection remove them, they develop tools and methods to make them stronger. Gleam's glow had settled into a steady purple of amazement. Maybe that's why they're so adaptable. They don't just accept their limitations. They find ways around them. Through their window, they could see humans walking under artificial lights, still active despite the darkness. Every moment showed them something new about these remarkable creatures who called Earth home. And somehow, they knew their upcoming observations would reveal even more surprising things about life on this extraordinary Deathworld. The morning started like any other day on their Earth observation mission. Blue, Spark, and Gleam were following Professor Reed through the university's science building, watching humans conduct experiments with dangerous chemicals and high-energy equipment. Everything seemed normal, or as normal as things could be on this Deathworld. Then the floor moved. At first it was just a small vibration. The alien students froze in terror as their sensors detected the movement. The humans in the laboratory continued their work, seemingly unaware of the impending disaster. The ground. Gleam's glow turned bright red with panic. The ground is moving. The vibration grew stronger. Pictures rattled on walls. A pencil rolled off a desk. Finally, the humans noticed, but their reactions weren't what the aliens expected. Oh, just a small quake, one student said, barely looking up from their microscope. Probably around 3.2, another added casually, checking their phone. Nothing to worry about. Blue's panic response kicked in. On his world, any ground movement meant immediate evacuation. He tried to run, forgetting about Earth's crushing gravity. His environmental suit's stabilizers couldn't compensate for the sudden movement. He stumbled, hitting a nearby table. The impact cracked his suit's outer layer. "We need to help your friend," Professor Reed said calmly, moving toward Blue while the ground still shook. "The earthquake will pass in a moment." Spark's scales had turned pale white with fear. "How can you be so calm? The planet is breaking apart." "This is a very mild earthquake," Professor Reed explained, helping Blue up. "Norway rarely gets serious ones. Now let's get Blue to the medical center to check that suit damage." The three aliens had never been to a human medical facility before. They had avoided them, believing them too primitive and dangerous. Now they had no choice. The medical center was a clean, white building filled with humans in pale green clothes. None of them wore environmental protection. They handled sharp metal tools and powerful medicines with bare hands. "The suit breach isn't serious," a human doctor said after examining Blue. "But we should check him for injuries from the fall. Would you be comfortable removing the damaged section of your suit?" Blue's breathing became rapid. "Remove his protection. In this environment. The room has been sterilized," Professor Reed assured him. "The air is filtered, and we've adjusted the temperature to match your home world." With trembling hands, Blue allowed them to remove the damaged section. He expected instant death. Instead, he felt fine. The humans worked quickly, using what they called X-rays to check for broken bones. Just some bruising, the doctor announced. You're lucky. Though in this gravity, your bones would have had to sustain much more force to break than they would on your world. As they repaired his suit, Blue watched the humans work. Their medical tools were simple compared to galactic standards, but they were incredibly effective. They had evolved on a world where injury was common, where their bodies needed to heal quickly to survive. Your skeletal structure is fascinating, the doctor commented while working. But it's adapted for a lower gravity environment. You might want to try some exercises to strengthen your bones while you're here. Many of our space program participants do the opposite when they leave Earth. Back in their safe room, the three students discussed their experience. They live on shifting ground, Gleam said, their glow still showing traces of fear. Their planet actively tries to shake them off, and they just adapt. Spark's scales had settled into a pattern of deep blue thought. Did you notice their medical facility? They've turned their experience with injury and death into a science of healing. Blue looked at his repaired suit. They called it a mild earthquake. Their buildings didn't even crack. On our worlds, we would have evacuated the entire city. Through their window, they could see the university had already returned to normal. Students walked between classes, laughing and talking. The ground had moved, and they treated it like a minor inconvenience. Maybe that's the secret, Blue said quietly. Humans don't just survive here. They expect things to go wrong. They build for it, plan for it. It's part of their daily life. The others nodded in agreement. Every day showed them new aspects of human resilience, but today had taught them something more. Humans hadn't just learned to survive disasters. They had learned to live with them, to build their civilization around the very things that should have destroyed them. And somehow, that made them even more remarkable. After the earthquake incident, the three alien students spent more time in the university library, diving deep into Earth's history. What they found amazed them. Look at this, Blue said, his breathing apparatus whirring with excitement as he showed the others his tablet. Humans survived multiple extinction events. Their planet tried to kill them with ice ages, and they made tools from rocks and bones to hunt giant creatures. Spark's scales shifted to a pattern of deep purple interest. That's nothing. Look what I found about their ancient civilizations. They built massive structures using just muscle power and simple machines. Some still stand today. But how did they spread across their planet? Gleam's glow pulsed with curiosity. The gravity alone should have kept them in one place. Professor Reed helped them access more historical records. The aliens learned how humans had crossed oceans in wooden boats, using just the wind and stars for guidance. They climbed the highest mountains just to see what was on the other side. They crossed burning deserts and frozen wastelands, always pushing forward. Your species lived in places where the air freezes, Blue noted, looking through climate data, and in places where water boils at ground level, sometimes in the same region during different seasons. We adapt, Professor Reed said simply. Look up something called sweater weather. You'll find it amusing. They did, and they were shocked. Humans would experience temperature swings that would kill most species, and they dealt with it by adding or removing layers of cloth. Some even enjoyed these deadly changes. Spark found records of human space exploration. They went into space using chemical rockets, without gravity dampeners or shield technology. The acceleration alone should have killed them. The first astronauts were test pilots, Professor Reed explained. They were used to high G-forces from flying aircraft. Speaking of which, would you like to see our aerospace engineering department? The aliens watched videos of early human flight attempts. Humans had strapped themselves to primitive engines and hurled themselves into the sky, failing countless times before succeeding. When their flying machines crashed, they studied the wreckage and built better ones. They learned from failure, Gleam observed, their glow showing patterns of realization. Other species avoid activities that might cause death. Humans do them anyway, figure out what went wrong, and try again. Their research revealed more surprising facts. Humans had survived plagues by developing medicine. They lived through famines by creating better farming methods. When natural disasters destroyed their cities, they'd rebuilt them stronger than before. Wait, Blue said, studying population data. Their numbers are still growing, even with all these dangers. We've gotten quite good at surviving, Professor Reed said with a smile. Though space is our next big challenge. That's partly why your research here is important. The aliens looked at their notes. They had recorded hundreds of ways Earth tried to kill its inhabitants. Diseases, predators, natural disasters, extreme weather, dangerous plants, poisonous animals, and more. Yet humans hadn't just survived. They had turned many of these dangers to their advantage. They learned about human medical advances born from studying toxic plants. They discovered how humans used venomous creatures to make life-saving medicines. Even the deadly bacteria and viruses that tried to kill them became tools in human hands. I think I understand now, Spark said, their scales showing a mix of colors representing complex emotions. Earth isn't just a death world. It's a teaching world. Everything that tries to kill humans ends up making them stronger. Look at these war records, Gleam added, their glow dimming at the data. They even survived conflicts with themselves. Each time, they developed new technologies and medicines from the experience. Blue reviewed their findings. Their buildings get stronger after each earthquake. Their emergency responses improve after each disaster. Their medicines advance after each disease. They're constantly learning, adapting, improving. Professor Reed watched them with interest. And what does that tell you about humans as a species? The three students looked at each other, their research giving them a new perspective on their supposedly primitive study subjects. These humans, these death world survivors, weren't just animals that had evolved to survive in a harsh environment. They were the ultimate adapters, the species that turned every challenge into an opportunity. And as they prepared to reach out into space, to explore other worlds, one thing became clear. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their ability to survive Earth's dangers. It was their ability to learn from them. The weather warning came suddenly. Professor Reed was showing the alien students the university's computer center when all the screens flashed red with alerts. A severe winter storm was approaching, bringing Arctic temperatures and heavy snow. The aliens watched in fascination as the humans around them sprang into action. "We're getting campus-wide power issues," a technician announced. "The backup generators are online, but the main grid is struggling." Through the windows, they could see the sky turning an ominous dark gray. The wind picked up, howling around the buildings. The temperature was dropping fast. Will they evacuate the city? Gleam's glow flickered anxiously. This looks like an extinction-level weather event. Professor Reed checked his phone. No evacuation needed, but we should get you three to the emergency shelter. Your environmental suits weren't designed for extreme Earth weather. As they moved through the campus, the aliens witnessed something remarkable. Instead of panic, the humans showed organization. Students helped secure loose equipment. Staff members distributed emergency supplies. Some humans even volunteered to check on elderly residents in the nearby community. The power went out completely when they were halfway to the shelter. The backup lights kicked in, casting everything in a dim glow. The temperature inside the building began to drop. "The heating system is down," Blue noted, checking his instruments. "How will the humans survive?" Their answer came quickly. The humans started gathering in central locations, sharing body heat and supplies. They pulled out chemical heat packs and thick blankets. Someone set up a simple stove powered by burning fuel. "This is how your species survived ice ages?" Spark asked, their scales showing patterns of amazement. "By combining primitive technology with group behavior. Among other things," Professor Reed said, helping distribute hot drinks to shivering students. "Humans are good at working together in a crisis." The storm grew worse. Wind rattled the windows, and snow piled up outside. The aliens' instruments showed temperatures that would instantly kill most galactic species. Yet the humans adapted. They blocked drafts with fabric, moved people to warmer areas, and kept checking on each other. Then they heard the cry for help. Someone was still in one of the research buildings, trapped by a frozen door mechanism. "We have to go out there," Professor Reed said, already putting on what he called a winter coat. The aliens watched in horror as he prepared to step into the deadly storm. "You'll die." Blue's breathing apparatus wheezed in panic, the wind chill alone. "I've got the right gear," Professor Reed said calmly, "and humans can handle cold better than you think. We're warm-blooded, remember." Before they could argue more, the professor headed out into the storm. The aliens watched through their sensors as he battled wind and snow, his body temperature dropping but remaining in what humans considered a safe range. "Their thermal regulation is incredible," Spark observed, their scales showing scientific interest even in this crisis. "They're maintaining core temperature through muscle movement and biological processes." Professor Reed returned 20 minutes later with the stranded researcher. Both were covered in snow but very much alive. The humans around them quickly provided warm drinks and blankets, working together to help their fellows recover. The storm raged for hours. The aliens observed as humans demonstrated survival skill after survival skill. They'd rationed supplies, maintained shelter, and kept morale high through something they called storytelling. They even found ways to make food without power, using chemical reactions and simple fire. "Look at their problem solving," Blue said quietly to his fellow students. "They're not just surviving. They're finding ways to make the situation better." Gleam's glow had settled into a steady pattern of understanding. They don't see disasters as something to flee from. They treat them as problems to solve. As the night went on, the humans organized sleeping shifts, keeping watch over their emergency systems. They checked on each other regularly, sharing resources and ensuring everyone stayed warm. The aliens watched as these Deathworld natives turned a crisis into what seemed almost like a social gathering. "I think," Spark said, their scales showing deep thought patterns, "we've been looking at Earth wrong. We saw it as a planet that should have prevented advanced life. But maybe it's exactly what was needed to create a species like humans." Blue finished. "All these disasters and dangers didn't stop them. They shaped them." Outside, the storm continued to rage, but inside, humanity showed why they had become the dominant species on their Deathworld. It wasn't just their physical adaptations or their technology. It was their unshakable drive to face any challenge together. Back at Galactic University, the three students stood before the Science Council to present their findings. The Great Hall was packed with beings from across the galaxy, all eager to hear about their experiences on Earth. Director Nim sat in the front row, his galaxy-like eyes twinkling with interest. Blue stepped forward first, his breathing apparatus now adjusted to show confidence. "Honored Council, we went to Earth expecting to study a primitive species struggling to survive on a Deathworld. We were wrong. Humans aren't survivors. They're pioneers." The hall filled with murmurs as Spark joined Blue, their scales shifting through patterns of scientific excitement. "Earth's gravity is 1.3 times stronger than our standard. Its temperature ranges from lethal cold to lethal heat. Its crust breaks, its air freezes, and its water falls from the sky. Yet humans didn't just adapt to these conditions. They thrived because of them." Gleam's steady glow illuminated their data displays. "Look at human bone density compared to other species. Their muscles, their endurance, their healing abilities. Everything about them was forged by Earth's challenges. Their intelligence developed not despite their harsh environment, but because of it." The students shared videos from their stay, showing humans doing everyday activities that shocked the council. Humans lifting weights in crushing gravity, children playing in freezing temperatures, students running for recreation. The emergency response during the winter storm. "We need to reclassify Earth," Blue announced. "It's not just a death world. It's an evolutionary forge. Every disaster that should have ended human civilization instead made them stronger." Spark changed the display to show human medical technology. They turned their predator instincts into surgical precision. Their knowledge of poisons became medicine. They studied their world's deadliest creatures to make treatments for disease. Even their wars pushed them to develop technologies we never imagined. But their most remarkable adaptation isn't physical. Gleam added, their glow pulsing with emphasis. It's their problem-solving ability. Humans don't accept limitations. When they can't do something, they invent a way to do it. The display showed human achievements: deep sea exploration, mountain climbing, desert crossing, space travel. The council watched in amazement as these Deathworld natives pushed into environments even more hostile than their home planet. They built machines to survive where they couldn't, Blue explained. When the machines failed, they studied the failures and built better ones. They turned their mistakes into learning opportunities, their disasters into advancement. Spark's scales rippled with excitement as they reached their key point, and now they're looking to the stars. Our previous studies suggested humans would struggle to adapt to other worlds. We were asking the wrong question. The real question is, are other worlds ready for humans? The hall erupted in discussion. Director Nim raised a hand for silence. What are you suggesting? Gleam's glow steadied as they answered. Humans are planning to colonize space. They're already developing ways to survive on worlds we considered uninhabitable. Their Deathworld experience gives them unique advantages. They can survive radiation levels that would kill most species. Blue added, they can repair their own genetic damage. They can adapt to extreme gravity changes. And most importantly, they want to explore, to push boundaries, to solve new problems. The students shared their final conclusion. Earth shouldn't be quarantined. It should be studied. Humans shouldn't be seen as primitive Deathworld natives. They should be seen as pioneers of survival, masters of adaptation. Their planet didn't limit them. It prepared them for the galaxy. Director Nim looked at the assembled council. And your recommendation? Open diplomatic relations, the three students said together. Learn from them. Share knowledge. Because if there's one thing we learned on Earth, it's that humans don't just survive problems. They solve them. And the galaxy has many problems that need solving. As the council debated their report, the three students looked at each other with pride. They had gone to Earth expecting to study simple creatures on a death world. Instead, they had discovered something remarkable, a species that turned adversity into advantage, crisis into opportunity, and limitations into challenges to overcome. They had learned why Earth was called a death world. But more importantly, they had learned why that made humans unique in the galaxy. Earth hadn't just created survivors. It had created innovators, problem solvers, and explorers. And now these Deathworld natives were ready to share their experiences with the stars. The galaxy would never be the same.